from deep down your heart, believe that the army does not belong to NRM?
It shouldn't, because the law says so. And I'm here. And let me tell you, I can't sit here. Yeah, because you see, this UPDF is established under the 1995 Constitution.
Even the Constitution.
And even the name changed. Why did the name change from NRA to UPDF? Because it was doing exactly what Raymond is talking about, shedding off that partisanship and that history. So look here, we now have a national army, governed by the Constitution and the rules, national rules, and not party rules. So really, to me, this is how I want to look at it. That this, and that's what I demand.
But the law,
that's what I demand,
yes,
and I have all the right to say, look here, as far as I know, according to the new constitutional order, starting in 1995, the UPDF is a national army, which all of us should be proud of, and not a partisan army. And whatever partisan things they are doing is unconstitutional, it is illegal, and we have to point it out.
I think the law...
I should tell my listeners to be educated in a manner by which Abdul answers questions. So I hope to take it up.
He has answered it very well. The question,
with real anger.
The question you asked
because I want the law.
You asked him whether he believes deep in his heart that UPDF does not belong to NRM, and he said it shouldn't. Yeah. So which he asked the other answer. Yes, the answer was
that is an aspirational answer.
Raymond, finish off your 2 minutes. We'll have a break, and then Joseph, and then Emmanuel Dombo, and because I want to start with NRM things.
Yeah, so for me, for example, I come from and removed from them. These are the people that Katuntu says are getting 3,000. So there are political realities of the day. There's the law, for example, that says borders should not ride on pavements. But the political reality of Kampala is that borders are on pavements. And to enforce the law creates a relationship.
That the speed fines will not cut
yes, it creates a relationship between the borders and the law. And every time, every time,
that's what you are telling me, because they are riding on the pavement.
Unfortunately,
you can't say, by the way, border is okay, they are pavement riders.
Let me just finish this point.
Because
unfortunately, in Uganda, every time the relationship between the law and the army has come into question, the violence of the day has won. I've just told you, the GSU, in 1969, Obote's assassination attempt, the following day, you had a different army from what people thought was the Ugandan army. There were now officers who had been brought into the corps that previously were not. UPC mobilized UPC wingers and brought them into the army. The army overnight came from 40,000 to 150,000. And you had these people deployed on the streets, deployed on the roads to enforce order. So those things, those are the political realities of the day. That if we insist that the Constitution says the army is below the Constitution, it's very likely we can become a military dictatorship.
Yeah.
So can we have an actual political conversation and say, you officers of the UPDF, where do you want to stop in the politics of Uganda? And then we civilians also tell them where we think they should stop and maybe come to a compromise and live with a compromise.
Well spoken, Raymond. Some of the things Joseph doesn't like. So, so we're going to stop for a break. After the break, we'll have Joseph here, and then on to...
And together we live forever. In love, it's a wonderful thing. Your mind at rest, you wanna try your best. Prepare a place in your heart.
Feeding your soul with nothing but hit music. Hit music. Feel good music.
Am I really hearing you?
Rough cuts. Fresh hits for Uganda. Capital FM. DJ Yowie. Rough cuts.
I am a warrior fighting
DJ Nyowe.
I am a warrior. I am a warrior.
Every Saturday from 12 p.m. on Capital FM.
Bapipo, omukuru no muto, sagala saudi de Saturday. Grab your kit, grab your shoes, because we are running.
Crosses the line in a
Running for what? To uplift rural coffee women out of poverty. Where? At the Coffee Marathon in Tungamo on the 24th of May. Are you ready to step up to the challenge? Jango Gireba Mama Wafe. And if running is not your thing, you can show up for the vibes. As we close the day at the Coffee Concert with live performances from Diamond Platnumz, Sister Charity, and Ray G. Visit www.coffeemarathonug.com to register now for just 30,000 shillings. Your fee includes a marathon kit and full access to the concert. The Coffee Marathon, uplifting rural coffee women out of poverty. Brought to you by Inspire Africa Group.
The Capital Gang on 91.3 Capital FM.
We'll come back from the break. More discussion in the break. Abdul Angelo is still with you. Says the answer is yes. UPDF is the property of the NRM. Yeah. Abdul is trading in a necessary fiction. The question is whether the NRM represents national interests or sectional interests.
I totally disagree. Anybody who says a constitution is a fiction. Constitution is not a novel. I think my brother Angelo, hold on, my brother Angelo is used to reading in novels and fiction novels. The Constitution of the Republic of Uganda is beyond a novel.
Let me tell you what Nora says. Nora Oraga says, thank you, Honorable Abdul Katontu. Just because they treat it that way, i.e., that they own it, should not be normalized. It was an excellent response. Let's discuss how they are in violation of the law, not normalizing that Amaje is theirs. Joseph, your own microphone.
I agree with Nora.
To conclude with this topic with Honorable Dombo.
No, I think, unfortunately, Abdu's position makes absolute sense because I totally understand it, except it comes purely from an aspirational perspective and nothing else. No, and unfortunately worse, the commander-in-chief and his family take this army as their personal property. And I was trying to give you a historical context, so that's why I took you to the 1980s position. And to them, it was an aspiration for which they have been lucky that the reality has been achieved. But very quickly, look, this depoliticization process that Raymond raised is actually important, and it can be done. You'll be surprised, and Mr. Museveni should listen to this. In the early 90s, again, I was amongst those, together with the other leaders of Uganda People's Congress, who were deliberately facing the reality that NRA had come in and they're occupying the Republic of Uganda. And those men and women who are now part of the NRA, we're not going to wash them away, to use Raymond's word. What do? We were saying that, look, these guys need to be trimmed. The little boys and girls who had been abused should be taken back to school and their welfare catered for. And that we have a small army trimmed enough to defend our national independence and territorial integrity, and not to become the destabilization force that it became. So we had huge goodwill that invest in this army, invest in the size and capacity that is actually sensible, and one for defending our country. I'm just repeating that deliberately, rather than a personal army and a force designed to destabilize and or to serve a particular individual interest. That you can do even if it was an NRA army. You create a group of men and women who see the nation state first. Unfortunately, I think that's far, considering the manner in which Mr. Museveni's son is behaving rather recklessly on X. It continues to be, unfortunately, a very difficult job to move that away from the original object to the national object, for which all of us want to be able to embrace and say that, look, we have a national army whose job it is to defend our national borders and territorial integrity and our security. I want to say this on the court-martial thing, that unfortunately, again, regardless of the very many aspects of the legislation being proposed, and many of them are reasonably good things, unfortunately, the court-martial element, in my opinion, is at the core, and the majority of the citizens believe is at the core. Another element of that was the attempted justification using Karamoja and the Koromojong to justify trial of civilians in military court. I find it insulting, and I've repeated that again and again. Absolutely insulting. The Karamoja question: if you've got a decent nation state and a democracy alleged that has been around for the last 40 years, and you cannot deal with cattle rustling except through military courts, that means actually generally you failed. And for Karamoja, a country that needs investment in education, investment in health, investment in infrastructure, investment taking back their gold rather than stealing their cattle and land, which is being done at the moment by NRA, I think that's a wrong example to be used. Finally, I was in Mbale 2 months ago to attend the burial of Mrs. Wakoli, the wife of the late Minister Joshua Wakoli, who disappeared in 1972 and was actually killed by Idi Amin. I'm repeating that because I also say that my area MP, and of course Ibrahim talk about his family that has disappeared. So the history of this. My late MP, I repeat this here, James Ochola, his remains too has never been found. Likewise, many families will talk about this. I don't think that from these histories, people who died in vain under Amin's time, we can look back and say we don't have lessons to learn, and we continue making these repeats again and again. This politics of torture and disappearances. And what I reject is that when it's convenient, we go ahead and go back to UPC times, those other times are happening. And finally, the idea of linking up whatever's attempting to be happening today, which is basically pushing individual interest with the rest of other democracies. Yes, there is no circumstance under which I will support the idea that a civilian qualifies to be tried in a military court. I am lucky I've gone around the world and I've gone around.
I'm going to give you another minute,
Yes.
Joseph,
Sorry.
because there's a quote here. There's Raymond who says that Moses is not so reckless because he does not post army material, sensitive material. But then the thing to do, you also must be challenged, Joseph. You are the one who keeps bringing up references of UPC in a manner to
contextualize. To contextualize.
No, not particularly to context, but to kind of whitewash that period. And that's why, every time that's when people jump in. And you should take note of that.
I've taken note of that, and I hope it's neutral in that. But as I said, it should not take away the fact that, our historical experiences should be used as lessons for us to build on foundations to go, rather than to justify excesses of an NRA today, 40 years later, which there is no circumstance that any other government would have the kind of privilege that they do have. And finally, this thing about the GSU, I think Abdul will talk about it. GSU is the equivalent of ISO and ESO. What is wrong with ISO and ESO? If these guys are doing their jobs and there's some criminals around town, you deal with them, but you deal with them legally and constitutionally. You know what? You take them to the formal court of law, rather than under people's basements and bossed.
Okay. Emmanuel Dombo is having last word on this one. And since you've been outnumbered on the gang, I'll give you extra minutes.
Thank you very much. I just want to remind everybody, our listeners and those present here, that Parliament has got a constitutional duty because we only have one Parliament. And they have to pass laws for the good governance of Uganda. By the time the Supreme Court came up with a judgment, already the UPDF Act, the UPDF bill, amendment bill, was before Parliament. And in your introduction, you talked about the good and the bad. When the president decided to decommission a number of generals, the first phase, he discovered, according to his own confession, that the amount of money a general was going out with as pension and gratuity was so small that it would not even be attractive for anybody to leave the army. And he decided to use his powers and give them ex gratia, which would recognize that. Let me hope that now that we are amending the law, that those injustices within the previous law against the military, when there was the computation of their pension and the gratuity, that these ones are going to be considered. So that people who join the army, they do it by choice. And when they leave it, they should live happy like the public servants were. When you look at the current law as is, it was very unfair to the military, And we believe that this amendment which is coming in, it because the military, whereas the civil service members are permanent and pensionable, in the military they are pensionable but they are not permanent. Because in the military, if you have not ascended to a certain rank by a certain age, ordinarily you are required to leave the army. And this favors a person who exits the army, and this amendment should be made to do that. It is also establishing a number of things that is going to ensure that the army is run well and is a professional institution. I've had people really raise a lot of hell about the decision to try the civilians in the court martial. They should raise this to the Supreme Court. Because the Supreme Court made a decision.
That try civilians.
Yes, that you can. That's a decision of court, like Honorable Katundu told you. Now the issue, Parliament has a responsibility that advisory order by the Supreme Court, how can it be implemented without it being construed to be targeting individuals or particular political parties? Parliament has nothing to do with it. NRM has nothing to do with it. It is a directive of the Supreme Court. And you just have a responsibility that those exceptional circumstances, how do you define them? I mean, how do you define them? Who should qualify and who shouldn't? And that is where the sobriety would be required when discussing and determining who should be tried or who would qualify to go there. But the final one, which I did hint on in the beginning, that the responsibility shifts when the NRM administration, where President Museveni, who is a political contender, is the commander-in-chief with the direct responsibility of maintaining public order. How will his decisions be construed when he brings a law under the Ministry of Defense, where he's the commander-in-chief? And this law is going to control people, including those he's going to compete with. Should he shy away from the responsibility? Should the NRM members shy away from the responsibility of doing their job because of the way the inference is going to be made by those who want to interpret this? The very final one, I want to tell my brother that
yes.
My brother Semuju, that treason is never treason when treason succeeds. When treason succeeds, it becomes a totally different thing, becomes a government, and starts putting laws and the frameworks. And the very last one is that let us use common sense to understand that laws are made to enable those in the government to implement their vision in order which they see for the people of Uganda. We are just unlucky that in Uganda we don't have direct executive orders required of a president to use executive orders. You have seen how President Trump has reacted. Immediately he became president.
Yeah.
He's given a leeway. So when you're a president, or when you're a leader, or even when
when Biden came in,
he becomes the president tomorrow or any other person, the law to give you
but not illegal things.
To create law
so
that will enable
thank you.
Public order, but also to ensure that the vision that you have for the country.
Thank you, Honorable Dombo. You have Noah Nyazi, the artist, says the problem at hand is the politicization of the military and militarization of the politics. Over to you, gang. And then Dr. Henry in the UK even speaks in Luganda, saying, Abdu atubuzabuza. So.
What is that in Runyankore?
I'm not supposed to laugh.
Can we go for a break?
No, the breaks are done. So, Honorable Dombo.
Answer his question. I think people deserve at the very least.
Honorable 1 an election. It's really good, Abdul, for Fonopondo to engage in politics. He won it unopposed. Because
Which
the way
is that?
he was elected
Publicity secretary. I think,
publicity secretary,
for
older person
Mulanda.
league, which makes a member of electoral college for MP flag bearer.
But you do there be anybody most qualified in his village than him.
Probably.
Is that a compliment to the village old?
So I'm giving
That is near my home, you know.
I want to start with him. So what are these elections for?
First and
What elections are you conducting?
First
And
and foremost,
congratulations to
I want to
Honorable.
congratulate my dear brother Ofono Opondo, somebody who has spoken for this government for over 25 years.
He should be rewarded.
He should be rewarded or recognized.
Thank you
And I
very
want
much.
to thank the people of Mulanda and specifically his sub-county, I don't know which it is,
Your way.
because yesterday we were conducting the elections for the sub-county structures of the National Resistance Movement. Our listeners should know that NRM should have gone to the elections previously, but because of COVID, we only conducted elections for certain leadership positions, but used the law to extend the administration of the structures of NRM and other political parties because they could not convene to elect their leaders. This is something which partially affected us, especially our youth league. We have had the youth league led by people who are no longer youth, and we have had many young people who aspire to join NRM and take up leadership who are not, who are being disenfranchised because of what was happening. I want to thank the structure and the leadership of the party which has enabled us, one, to construct a register for the National Resistance Movement, membership register, but also voters register, but also the decision to hold the structure elections for the leadership of the party. The public should know that NRM in the 72,000 villages of Uganda, on the 60th of May, we conducted an election which gave us a result of having 30 leaders elected to lead the National Resistance Movement. We also conducted primaries for the LC1 flag bearers, those who will hold the flag for NRM, if they will still be NRM at that time anyway, because people either join or leave the party. Join or leave the party. When Justice Biabakama decides to conduct, the Electoral Commission decides to conduct the elections for the LC1 in the country, we have had a very successful exercise. We started with the villages, and last week we were conducting elections for the parish, where we have elected the leaders at the parish. The 30 who are elected in the village become members of the parish council, and all the 30 within the village, including the political leaders who are flag bearers, constitute what is called the parish council, and they elect the 30 who go to the sub-county. These are the ones who convened yesterday to conduct the elections for the sub-county executives. These elections were very hot, they were very competitive, and now we have members who are going to constitute the district conference at the end of this month when they sit constitute a district conference, and they elect the district executive of the NRM, and also delegates, some of the delegates who will be part of the national conference when it is convened by the national chairman.
First stop here. I want to give everyone 2 minutes, then give you last word because we are out of time.
Are you sure?
Beginning with you, Raymond.
I was just beginning.
The crisis with NRM.
Go on, Raymond. I don't have a question to ask you. It's a response to Emmanuel Dom.
I think there are three things that emerged from that election. And for me, I think it's been the contention that the NRM is a mass party. Whether it's popular is another question altogether. But I think the demonstration remains that the NRM is a mass party. And other political players have to contend with that fact, that it being unpopular may not necessarily mean that it's not a mass party. And many people still see their vehicle towards political leadership coming through the NRM, even though they would have patently belonged elsewhere. Number two, it also rang for me a huge contradiction, because members of the NRM seem indifferent to the other political players in the system. Other political players, Honorable Ssemujju Nganda here, has been trooping to the Electoral Commission almost once every week to demand, can we have our party registered? Can we be allowed to hold our party elections? So it rang a contradiction for me on the NRM to say...
Is there a kind of hubris?
It's a hubris, but it's a dangerous hubris to have, because if these things happen to the NRM, you need people like Ssemujju to fight for you. Wow. If, for example, Ssemujju tomorrow turns out as the Justice and Constitutional Affairs Minister in the PFF government, you need him to say the NRM should be able to have their mass elections in every village as and when they wish. So that contradiction remains. But I think the other final one is to ask what is the direction of this NRM, because now their party chairman is patently old, definitely tired, you can see it. And yet the party tells us there are many young, vibrant, ready individuals to take over the leadership.
They have a CDF who does not believe in all that chain of...
CDF who is also a member of the NRM, because at the party register, it was confirmed that he's a voting member of the NRM cell in the village in Rashura. Right. So we need the NRM to be ready for that.
Joseph, your 2 minutes.
Did you say CDF is a member of NRM? Is he a member of NRM?
The documents show it.
Isn't he?
Joseph, you only have 2 minutes.
Isn't he supposed to be non-partisan? And in any case, isn't he also the chairman of a particular organization called PLU, something like that?
The pressure group, that's what it is.
Okay.
By the way, social media is murdering you today. You'll just go through the post.
Okay, we're used to that, starting with the 60s trying to secure our nation state, in the 80s trying to check ourselves against what we knew would be an excess around NRM.
On Emmanuel Dombo's submissions, now you are left with a minute.
But, congratulations to...
Ojamo
Pondo in Segere. But Emmanuel is mobilizing to Segere indeed, yes. Emmanuel is mobilizing. They're mobilizing themselves to prepare themselves for next election, because they saw the shock actually in 2001. And actually what the NRA guys are doing are actually quite smart. They've been woken up, and I think this credit we should give to NUP, knowing that if they don't do these things and plan early enough to establish themselves, they'll be taken by a shocker. And of course, privilege, they've got the time, they've got the advantage, they've got our national resources to be able to mobilize and organize. Nobody's stopping them anywhere across the country.
Honorable Ssemujju, your 2 minutes.
I grew up under the UPC government.
That's why you're very...
And we used to line up the roads as they were going to Bushenyi. The UPC T-shirts and everything, they had the capacity to distribute campaign materials to the whole country.
Not from public money.
They may not have abused the state to the levels of NRM. So the NRM should be judged in that context. You are dealing with the state party. If you look, I made a response to the budget. Today, the president has 650-something RDCs, each with a brand new pickup.
Many of them are resigning to ready themselves.
It's just a few. It's just a few, but others will be appointed. If you look at the staff of the office of the president, including the State House, political mobilizers. So in the public service now, we have a job called the political mobilizer under State House. They are about 70. You have presidential assistant on political. I mean, that's how the Butcherman and Catherine Kusasira.
So where are you going with this in relation to?
So there is no party called NRM that we should waste our time discussing. You just talk about the government of Uganda. Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who heads the army, has said, you opposition, we are going to beat you. For us, we are Tutsi. And I like Muhoozi. He doesn't speak, he doesn't hide, he doesn't pretend. He says, you opposition, we are going to beat you. You will know that we are Tutsi. Okay. So, Ofano Pondo, I want Ofono Opondo to succeed. First of all, there is no opposition party that has a chance to compete under the special interest group. The first special interest group is UPDF, 10 MPs. Their election is presided over by M7, the chief of military intelligence. They have now changed them, the chief of personnel. They generate a list. It goes to the president, and then he reduces it. Then he will go and address them, then they elect. That's the first special interest group. The one of Ofono Opondo, it is also all the MPs representing other persons are all NRM. So this special interest group is one way of NRM doing what UPC used to do, gerrymandering.
Honorable Katonto, your 2 minutes.
Abdu is looking at me.
You've spoiled my evening by your last statement.
Well, you're going to first start with the afternoon. We are 2 minutes to the afternoon.
Yeah, but
you're
the whole evening is gone. You know? Anyway, I don't know whether I should congratulate the NRM
or Ofono.
First of all, I congratulate him. I think if he eventually succeeds, like I think he will, he could be a value addition to Parliament. I don't think he's a guy, they will have known him right from school, who is a straight jacket fellow that they'll come, tell him, do this, and so on. Many moments he's going to speak his mind. And you see, the older you get, the wiser you become. Because he's not looking for any other job after his tenure in Parliament. So really, to me, he's going to be a dividend to that institution.
Okay.
Having said that, I followed keenly, especially in my constituency, what was going on in the NRM, do you call them what? Structure elections. And eventually I talked to many of my other colleagues. What is interesting is that all these elections were managed and supervised by the Office of the RDC and the District Internal Security Organization.
Yeah.
So, and that's the sort of complaint we've been having of having a fusion of the state structures and the party.
Thank you, Abdu.
And if you think, the Honorable Dombo, that is good for your party, in the longer run,
there's a challenge.
You
Let's give
may have to think twice.
minute left to Honorable Dombo.
But I think Honorable Katuntu is old and he should be able to know that he's happy.
We don't have time, Honorable Samajo.
ISO is a political office. The people occupying those offices, that's why they don't come to Parliament for approval.
They are political function.
Do you approve them in Parliament?
We don't approve all offices.
Absolutely, yes. That is why I'm telling you that they are appointed. You even don't know how they are appointed and who qualifies. That's why.
So in conclusion, Honorable Dombo, you have just half a minute left. His microphone is not on, Honorable Dombo. You conclude your minute.
It is a statutory organization, but the occupants of those offices.
Honorable Dombo.
Whether you like it,
Honorable
this
Dombo.
is the reality.
Honorable Dombo, give your final sentence. You're the only one on microphone.
This is the reality.
He's the only one on microphone.
This is the reality which I'm telling you. You may take it or leave it, but that's a fact.
Yeah. Even you're only one on microphone, Honorable Dombo. Give your final
And
sentence.
the final thing is that I am calling on the members of the public, and especially the NRM, that let us participate in the remaining exercises. And I want to thank those who participated in the update of the registers. Right now, we're on the final stages of working on the NRM register so that we can deliver qualitative elections in the NRM primaries.
Thank you so much, Honorable Dombo. Next, Capital Radio has Rough Cuts with DJ Enyowe. The way Dombo speaks, he cannot even have a class going through because we are out of time. Thank you, Star Cafe, for your food, for the powering the gang. They've been very, very strong. Honorable Katuntu, thank you. Honorable Semuju, thank you. Honorable Dombo, thank you. Soon to be Honorable Joseph Ocheno, thank you. Raymond Mujuni, thank you. I am Oscar Semoyam Soke, and I...
Capital Gang on 91.3 Capital FM.